Hey guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I am a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So today I'm really excited to go into a fun chart analysis. So we're going to look into the chart of Maya, who is a really talented R&B singer, lyricist, songwriter, and what I find so fascinating about her life experience is the independence that really exists in her life stories. One aspect of this is she got burned by the music industry, which happens very often for a lot of singers. There was a lot of controversy in her career, so she decided to carve her own path and become an independent artist. And I think that's so cool. And she was talking about how she makes a lot of money, more money as an independent artist, and she has a lot of this freedom in her career. And another aspect of like the freedom, independence aspect is she also discusses a lot how she was never interested in the traditional path of marriage and kids. And she was more so focused on just carving out her own sort of creative, independent path in this lifetime. So I think that's really fascinating as well, too, to analyze in the chart, because she does have a lot of afflictions on her seventh house, which is really interesting when that happens. Like if the seventh house or the seventh ruler has afflictions or issues with it, people might intuitively not want to marry because they feel something about that, right? And when we look into her seventh house of marriage, there are definitely issues going on there. So that'll be really interesting to unravel. And I just think she's so dope. She has such a cool vibe, cool style. I was also watching her interviews and she has this like really beautiful, soft spoken voice. And I thought it was so funny because I was watching her speak and I was like, does she have Venus in her second house, which gives a very soft, sort of pretty Venusian voice? And then I pulled up her chart. And of course, she has Venus in Libra in the second house. So really spot on, really fascinating, and I'm excited to unravel her chart because this is one of those charts where it's so specific. It's so spot on that it's like funny in that way. So we'll get into it. We're going to see the singing, the use of the voice, the creativity, the independence, the career issues as well too, and all of it. All right, so really excited. Okay. So let us start with Maya's Lagna or ascendant, because this is like a huge part of her life story. So Maya is a Virgo ascendant, right? And her ascendant is 19 degrees. Okay. So ascendant is 19 degrees. The sun is about 22 degrees right there on the ascendant. So that's a really tight degree orb of conjunction, right? Ascendant is 19, sun is 22. That sun is really going to be felt in the first house and felt in the life story and the life experience, right? So what is the sun? The sun is leadership, the sun is autonomy, the sun is confidence, the sun is independence, right? So because that sun is so strong in the first house, it shows that a huge theme of her life is actually herself, quite literally, right? Like carving her own path, being independent, being a leader. You know, the sun is that confidence, it's that leadership ability, it's that autonomy, right? So it's on her first house. So it means that this is a lifetime of the self, quite literally, right? She's here to develop herself. She's here to shine. She's here to be independent. She's here to really focus on the self, right? Because even though in Gemini astrology, you know, the Atmakarka is the highest degree planet, which would become Saturn, for her, it's also the Atmakarka in the Vedic system is also the sun. Like the sun is Atma, it's the soul. So wherever the sun goes, there's a huge focus of that energy in this lifetime, right? And so for her, it's in the first house of self. So the sun is quite literally like shining, putting all its energy into the first house of the self, right? And she talks about how it's a very self-focused lifetime, a lot of independence, a lot of autonomy. She, you know, went outside of the conventional norms of the music industry. She works for herself, essentially. She really carved her own path in this lifetime. So sun in the first house, Atma, it's all about the self. It's all about her. Not in a selfish way, but you will find sometimes sun in the first house, people can come across a little selfish or self-focused. But the thing about astrology that's funny is it helps us take away the judgment about that, because it's like her sun is literally sitting there. Of course it's supposed to be about her in this lifetime. It's like that. So very interesting. She also has Pluto on the ascendant. So Pluto with the sun. there would be some issues at times with the father, some intensity there as well too. And Pluto in the ascendant would show a life of a lot of change, a lot of transformation. If you see Pluto in the first house and it's like a tight degree with the ascendant, someone is always changing. They transform a lot. They have these really intense transformational life experiences. And you'll find that they are always very different. They're going through these different evolutionary time periods in their life. So it's a lot of change, a lot of transformation like that. Okay. So that sun is right there on the ascendant. It's already a lifetime about her, about independence, autonomy, etc. Okay. Now, what's interesting about the sun being in the first house is it's going to directly oppose the seventh, right? So now we get sun aspecting the seventh house of Pisces. So sun is not great for the seventh house. It gives partners that are too much. There's a lot of like ego, confidence, dominance, struggles at times. So we can already see that sun is on the seventh. If we want to take Pluto, now Pluto is on the seventh. So that's already some malefic influence on the seventh house of marriage and business partnerships, right? So she's going to attract relationships, partnerships, business partnerships where there's these like ego sort of struggles, like confidence, ego battles, right? And that's a huge reason why she left the music industry, right? One thing that she talks about is, I guess, she refused to like sleep with someone in the music industry, and that was a big part of why she got kind of, blacklisted in the industry. So that sun is going on the seventh house of business partnerships and connections, and it's creating ego struggles, power struggles like that. All right, and having Pluto with the sun in itself is creating a lifelong experience of like, okay, one person is in power. How do I get my power back? There's a lot of this like power dynamic when the Pluto energy comes with the sun, and it's on the ascendant as well too. Okay, so we already are seeing this like malefic influence onto the seventh house of marriage and business partnerships, but obviously there's a lot more to unravel. We wouldn't just take that one aspect and be like, okay, she should never get married. She's going to have difficult business partnerships. It's not like that. We'll get into more analysis of that as well too. Okay. Sun in the first, she's here to focus on herself. It's also in Virgo in the Hasta Nakshatra. So something about her hands is important, right? And she's a writer. She writes a lot of her music, a lot of her lyrics. So there's something important with the hands, with that Hasta Nakshatra as well too. Sun in Virgo, she's going to have some interest in like health, wellness, healing, and be a bit of a perfectionist at times as well too. Okay. So because the ascendant is Virgo, that means the whole chart is going to get ruled by Mercury, right? So then we hop over to the placement of Mercury. And this is one of those aspects of chart analysis that's like too spot on that it's like eerie. So her first ruler is Mercury, and it's in the second house. Guys, what is the second house? The second house is quite literally the voice, and she's a singer. She is literally a singer. Like, it doesn't get more literal than that. Okay, so her whole chart is ruled by the second house of the voice, singing, expression, like that. And it's not just the fact that the first ruler is in the second house. It's not like, oh my God, someone's first ruler is in the second house, they're a singer. It's not that simplistic. But the first ruler is in the second house next to a really strong Venus, okay? So first ruler is in the second. She's ruled by Mercury. She's going to enjoy communication, learning, writing, expression, like that. And then it's right near a really, really strong Venus. Okay, so it's not just near Venus debilitated, it's near Venus in Libra, where Venus shines, right? Venus loves to be in Venus loves to be in Libra. So her first ruler is next to a really strong Venus, okay? So now we get two benefics in her second house, and we get two benefics in the first ruling house, right? So we would say, okay, first ruler is in the second. It's near Venus. There's going to be creativity because Venus is the karaka for the arts and beauty and creativity. She's also gorgeous, right? And the second house is actually the face. It's the appearance, right? And so they say like benefics in the second gives a beautiful face. It's not going to work 100% of the time, but she has two benefics in the second, Venus of beauty, and she is gorgeous. Like, she is absolutely stunning. I saw these like photos from one of these earlier photo shoots she did back in the day, and I was like, oh my goodness, she's actually one of the most like stunning people I've ever seen. She has that like beautiful, just like unique look that I love so much. So she does have Venus, a karaka for beauty, in the second house of the face, and she happens to have a beautiful face, right? What are the odds? So yeah, that's a really, really strong Venus, and Mercury is 11 degrees, Venus is 5 degrees, so that's a really tight degree orb of conjunction, right? And in the second house of, poetry, writing, speech, expression, her voice is very Venus in the way that it's soft, it's very beautiful, right? They say Venus in the second house gives poetry, and her music is poetry, right? I'm sure she writes a lot of poetic, beautiful music like that, okay? So Venus with Mercury is also a creative conjunction in itself. So Venus-Mercury is one of those conjunctions that you might not initially think about how creative it is, but think about it like this. Mercury is the mind, it's the mental energy, it's the expression, it's the nervous system, it's the mother, etc. But Mercury is how someone is processing information, right? So if Venus is next to the planet that is like processing things, it's almost like a filter with Mercury. It's like the way we express, view things, etc. And it's right next to a karaka of beauty, art, love, romance, someone thinks in a way that's poetic, that's beautiful, that's Venusian. So, my second Vedic teacher would always tell us Venus-Mercury is a creative signature. Like when you see it, even if someone isn't a professional artist, there's a creative signature in their chart. They're going to think creatively, they're going to be artistic by nature, right? So really strong Venus in Libra next to Mercury, 2 benefics in the second house of the voice, the speech, writing, expression, her face, beauty. Oh my goodness, like this is really, really spot on, right? Like this is her whole life story. So Mercury with Venus is the arts. Venus being strong in Libra in second house is the arts. And it's the first ruler. So her whole life is ruled by 2 benefics sitting in a house of voice, speech, expression, creativity. Venus, Mercury together is creativity and poetic writing, beautiful voice, okay? So what's really interesting is a lot of other planetary aspects are actually hitting her second house. And this is where things get kind of complex in astrology, where it's really a weighing out thing, right? So it's like, okay, we get a really, really strong Venus in the second, and then we get Mercury, a benefic. We get 2 benefics really strong in that second house. So the other malefics aren't going to harm it nearly as much as it would if like Venus and Mercury were weak in the 6th house, for example. Okay, so do you see how it's like it's a whole system. It's a whole really complex system of analysis. But let me show you guys how much else is actually aspecting that second. So Ketu is in the 6th house, which is going to aspect by its 5th, 9th aspect the second, right? So now Ketu is on Venus, Ketu is on Mercury. Okay, now Mars by its 4th aspect, 1, 2, 3, 4, is also aspecting. Okay, so we get Ketu, we get Mars, is now on that second house, is on Venus, is on Mercury. And then we also get Saturn, actually. So Saturn, by its 3rd aspect, 1, 2, 3, is also aspecting that Venus-Mercury conjunction the second. So that's a lot of energy going on to the second house, right? And what that would show us is that second house is so strong that it's going to like hold up, right? And the second ruler is so strong, which is like the foundation of the house. So the second house is going to be strong, but we're going to get some other influences, right? We're going to get Ketu. So there's going to be some strangeness, there's going to be some mysticism with the Venus-Mercury energy. It's not going to be great for relationships at times because Ketu on Venus is like a void, distant, disconnected, and Mars on Venus is going to give a lot of like passion, a lot of creativity, but can also cause issues or harm Venus for the people in the life. So do you guys see what I'm saying? Like it's this really big weighing out factor, but Saturn aspecting there is going to show like some blocks, some restrictions, but also a lot of discipline towards it. So we get Ketu, we get Mars, we get Saturn, all aspecting the second house, right? So it's a lot of energy going there, but because the second is so strong and the second ruler is such a strong foundation, it's not going to harm it as much as it would if it was like a different sort of house or a different sort of sign, okay? I hope that makes sense. I know this is where astrology gets really complex, but it's just like that, okay? So Ketu's on the second. Ketu on Mercury is going to give some creative writing ability, maybe at times she's a little bit Ketu-like in her speech or her expression, more distant, a little bit disconnected. They can be kind of Ketu-like in the way they express themselves, a little spacey or kind of like that. And then Mars on Venus is very creative as well too. Mars-Venus conjunct or aspecting is a classic creative conjunction. So Mars is just kind of energizing that Venus for creativity, passion. It's going to be a passionate sort of creative lifetime for her with that. And then that Saturn is more so going to give like discipline and structure to the second house of the voice, right? So it's like that. I know it's a lot to like take in, but you just kind of have to see how strong that second house and how strong that Venus, a karaka for the arts is, right? Is Ketu and Mars and Saturn on Venus going to cause issues for the karaka of love and relationships? Yes. Like I said, malefics harm the people more than the energy of like the arts when it goes onto Venus, right? So like Ketu on Venus, Mars on Venus isn't going to mean someone isn't creative. It's more so going to mean it creates issues for the relationships or the spouse, like that. Okay. But because Venus is so strong and the second ruler is so strong, we still get this amazing Mercury Venus in the second. Beautiful voice, speech, face is beautiful expression, etc. Poetry, poetic, all creative. Okay. All right. So that's that, right? That's her whole life story right there. No, but very fascinating. And let us move on to the fifth house, because I think this is really interesting. So fifth house would be the house of children. And she talks about the fact that she was never called to have children, right? And her fifth ruler is really not great. So fifth house Capricorn ruled by Saturn, okay? It's in the 12th house. So fifth ruler is in a Dastana house, a difficult house, okay? And it's next to Rahu, all right? Is it near Jupiter? Yes, but the fifth ruler being in the 12th house is already going to show, some loss, some disconnection from children. And then it's next to Rahu, which fifth ruler next to Rahu is not great for that fifth house energy. So we're seeing, some issues there. Okay. And there was, not a lot of desire for her with children, right? With that fifth ruler in the 12th house. Okay. Now, let us move on to the Ketu Rahu axis. So she has Ketu in the 6th house, Rahu in the 12th. So she's going to be very interested in health, healing, spirituality, alternative healing modalities. Ketu in the 6th is going to give some interest to like unique or different ways of healing and health. And she talks a lot in this recent interview how she's very into these like different ways of healing, how she's kind of aging backwards. She looks so amazing for her age. And she talks a lot about different healing modalities and practices and spirituality that she's interested in. So Ketu Rahu in the 12th, 6th axis, whether it's Rahu in the 6th, Ketu in the 6th, flip-flop, right? Vice versa, whatever it is, wherever Ketu and Rahu is going, if either one is in the 6th or the 12th house, the nodal axis is highlighting this major theme of healing and health and wellness and spirituality. So someone's going to be focused on health to some degree. Okay. And Ketu in the 6th can also show there's something unconventional about her daily routines, her daily structure, right? There's kind of this interesting Ketu-like energy. So, she went a very non-traditional path in her work, in her daily, day-to-day life, and that's that Ketu energy there as well too. So she's definitely going to have an interest in alternative sort of spiritual healing modalities, and she's learning to balance between like day-to-day work, daily structure, and the part of her that's a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more called to like non-traditional paths as well too. She's going between those two energies with the Rahu-Ketu axis. Okay. And what's really interesting as well too is her Rahu is in the 12th house next to Saturn, next to Jupiter. So a lot of energy is activated in her 12th house. Jupiter Rahu, she's going to have an interest in spirituality, metaphysics, all things sort of spiritual. And she is, right? She's very spiritual. If you read her interviews, watch podcasts about her, she's always talking about her interests in spirituality and healing and different things like that. She also was celibate for a really long period of time, and she said it brought her a lot of this mental clarity, right? The 12th house is kind of like cutting things out, and Saturn's there as well too. And actually the 12th house is the house of bed pleasures, sexuality, so it's really interesting that Saturn would be in the 12th house of bed pleasure, and she would cut out sexuality for a very long time period of her life, right? It's very literal. Sometimes with Vedic astrology, it's like kind of, funny like that. So Saturn is there. She cuts out sexual activity for a good period of time. I think it was like 7 years, she said, because she just really wanted to focus and get clear in her mind. So Saturn there is restricting, cutting out the 12th house of bed pleasures, quite literally. Okay. And then with Rahu there, it shows that she's learning something about that 12th house. There can be extremes wherever Rahu Ketu goes, so she can have extremes in the 12th house and then extremes in the 6th house and kind of go back and forth like that. Okay, so Jupiter-Saturn is also a conjunction in Vedic astrology, whether it's conjunct or opposite. That shows that someone is breaking boundaries in this lifetime. Doesn't mean that they are, but they have the ability to do so. This is something my second Vedic teacher, James, would kind of drill in our heads, like Jupiter, Saturn, breaking boundaries. And she has really broke the boundaries in the music industry, right? She became an independent artist. She went her own path. She doesn't want to get married. She doesn't really want to have children. That is breaking the boundaries. That is changing, the conventional sort of path we would expect from someone in this lifetime, right? So she is quite literally breaking those boundaries or norms in both the music industry, but also the way she lives her life, very alternatively, very, independently, like that. So Saturn Jupiter is a signature that can show the ability for someone to break boundaries in their career or in their lifetime, and she did that, right? So Rahu, when it goes near planets, it's going to expand that energy, and it's also going to show a major theme there. So Rahu is with Jupiter. She's going to have an interest in spirituality, foreign lands, different cultures, philosophical ideas like that. And then it's also near Saturn. So she's also going to have a lot of lessons around discipline, structure, austerity. It's a very spiritual lifetime for Maya, right? Rahu with Jupiter, Rahu with Saturn in the 12th house, a Dastana house, also a Moksha house, which shows spiritual enlightenment, okay? Very spiritual lifetime. And she would be very interested in the more like austerity sort of path, meaning that for her, she would do well when she cuts things out. She would do well when she like meditates, when she gets very still, very quiet. If we're talking about like what kind of spirituality someone goes towards, if there's a lot of Saturn influence, because Saturn is with Rahu with Jupiter, it's in the 12th house, and it's also her Atmakarika, it's her highest degree planet, she would have a lot of Saturn influence in her spiritual practices, right? So for example, her going celibate for 7 years, that's cutting out something, right? She also talks about she cuts out a lot of things from her diet. I believe she's vegan. So there's this path of austerity for Maya as well too, because of that strong Saturnian influence. She's going to really be here to learn how to cut things out of her life to reach some sort of like more enlightened space. I know that's very specific, but that's how specific we can get in astrology, in Vedic astrology, baby. All right, so Saturn, Rahu, Jupiter in the 12th house, spiritual lifetime, moksha, foreign lands, different cultures, very important in her life path. And remember, she's cutting out bed pleasures, etc. with Saturn in the 12th, and that's quite literally what she did for a good 7 years of her life, right? So she's going to have time periods where she's very disciplined with that 12th house. Okay, we also get Saturn, like I said earlier, it is aspecting her Mercury, it's aspecting her Venus. So her mind can be very Saturn. It can also be very Venus. So she's going to be very creative at times, beautiful. She loves the pleasure. She loves beauty, fashion, art, etc. But then Saturn's also aspecting. So she also has a mind that can be very Saturn, very disciplined, very structured, very like I can cut things out if they need to go like that. Okay. All right. Very, very interesting. So here's another really interesting like minute aspect of analysis is Jupiter is on her 4th, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Rahu is on her 4th house. So Jupiter is aspecting Sagittarius, which Jupiter loves Sagittarius. Rahu is going there. So Jupiter, Rahu on the 4th, I would say she might have some really important like land or real estate in this lifetime. And I believe, let me double check this, but I believe she has some like really nice house. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So it says Maya talks about buying a house in Jamaica. She has a love for Jamaican culture. Guys, did I not just say she's going to have a love for different cultures? sometimes it's just so literal that it's funny. I'm like, she's gonna love different cultures, foreign lands. Now she's talking about buying a house in Jamaica, foreign land, different culture. Okay, so Jupiter Rahu onto the 4th. She's going to acquire at some point some really nice house, some big real estate, and could potentially be connected to a foreign land or different culture, because that's also Jupiter Rahu on the 4th house of the home. Okay, there you go. Yes, it's that literal. Okay, so something I also find very fascinating in Maya's chart is her moon is very isolated, right? It's almost like a Kima Druma, not fully. So I'm actually I'm like, is anything aspecting her moon? She really might not even have that many aspects on the moon. Okay, so this is really interesting. So when the moon is very isolated like that, see how there's nothing, we get Neptune, but that's an outer planet. See how the moon is really by itself in the chart? There's no planets here, there's no planets here, there's no planets opposite the moon. It gives this very isolated sort of lifetime where someone feels very misunderstood from an early age. They feel isolated in their energy. They feel like people aren't always there to support them in the way that they would desire. So there was like either a lot of moving around and they didn't create these important friendships, or they felt like they were unsupported in their family upbringing. Isolated moon can be difficult for the connection that someone receives in this lifetime. And what I find very interesting about the isolated moon as well too is like how much she really has gone towards independence, being on her own, not wanting marriage, not wanting kids, right? Just really fascinating that she does have that moon so isolated in the chart. I actually am kind of surprised by that. So yeah, that's a very isolated moon. So nothing is really aspecting that moon. So I would guarantee you guys that she had a lot of like loneliness or isolation in her upbringing, or she felt very misunderstood a lot of her life as well too, because that moon is really on its own. But her moon is also strong in Taurus. So she has a really nice moon in the 9th house. So it's going to be good for the 9th house. It's going to show that she's going to love travel, spirituality, foreign cultures, different lands. She's going to love, esoteric spiritual stuff. She's going to love, she'll do well with like gurus, guides, teachers. And what you'll find is if someone has a benefic or like a well-placed 9th house, and also we have to remember her 9th ruler is Venus, that really strong Venus, it's going to show that they do well with getting like astrology readings. So if someone has a really good 9th house, those are the charts that I can read, and I read them very well. Meaning that it's just flowing. Their charts are very open to read. It's very accurate when someone has a good 9th house. If someone has an afflicted 9th house, those are charts that are more difficult to read, and it's actually hard to get as much information as you want out of it. And it might be because they're not like meant to, work with like guides, gurus like that, but you'll just find that. So she has a really good moon in Taurus. The moon loves to be in Taurus in the 9th house. So she's going to do well with like astrology readings, spirituality, different cultures, philosophical teachings, guides, gurus like that. And 9th house is also the father. And I think I don't remember if she was close. Let's see, with her father. Was Maya close? They had to have some closeness. Okay, yes, singer Maya was close to her father, and he played a significant role in her early career by helping her get her start in the music industry. He assisted her in recording a demo tape and took it to a club where he met a music executive who signed her. Okay. Well, so her father played a very big role in her lifetime, right? Because before his involvement, Maya took violin lessons and taught dance. Okay. Her family is very musical, and her parents encouraged her to pursue singing and dancing as a career. Okay. Her upbringing emphasized the importance of education and working hard to achieve good grades. Well, this is so fascinating. So, okay, first of all, the moon is so strong in the 9th house, so it shows an importance of the father, a closeness to the father. It's not hit by a bunch of malefics, right? So that's good for that. And also, 2nd house is early childhood and education, and she gets Venus, Mercury, 2 indications of the arts and 2 benefics. So that shows that her early education was about creativity, music, dance, art, drama, and also the early childhood upbringing would be very creative. So that's all of that. That's the whole life story. So yeah, because her moon is well placed in Taurus and it's in the 9th house, there's a good relationship with the father, and the 9th ruler is very strong. Venus is in Libra. So really good relationship, good for the relationship with the father. and also good for philosophical, spiritual pursuits. And she's also going to be very interested in travel, different cultures. Once again, we really see that there. Okay, very fascinating. So her father did play a very big role, and you're going to see wherever the moon goes, it's really important in the life story, right? Because the moon is in the Vedic system, it's a moon-based system. So the moon is always going to show a point of interest or nurturing. So for Maya, like, she feels comfortable, she feels nurtured when she is traveling, when she's engulfed in different cultures, when she's connected to her father, when she's learning. That's when she's going to feel really good. And moon is also on the third house, right? So third house, it's aspecting by direct opposition, is going to be artistic endeavors as well too. So that's a benefic on the third as well. Okay. All right. So that is that. So yes, the father did play a very big role, and I did not know that until the research, but I was like, she has a really good moon in the ninth house, not hit by malefic. She has to have had a closeness or some importance of the father. So really cool to see that. Okay, what I want to move on to is how afflicted the seventh house is for Maya. Okay, and the reason I want to say this is because, not to scare anyone and to say like, oh my gosh, if you have afflictions on your seventh house, you're never going to get married, but more so to say that people intuitively know their own path in this lifetime. Like, people get an intuitive sense about certain things that are either going to go well for them or maybe not go so well, right? And so Maya not having a big desire for marriage is just funny in the way that she has a chart where it's like, you're looking at it and it's like, it's like, I don't know about marriage for this chart, you know. Doesn't mean she can't have relationships or have like a stable partnership. It's just like, if she was to go towards traditional marriage, it just might not go so well. So let's unravel this. Okay. So earlier I brought up the fact that the sun is aspecting the seventh. That's already malefic. I don't love sun in the seventh or aspecting the seventh. It is not a great placement. It gives partners who are like greedy, they can have ego, power clashes, struggles like that. It can show that the partner is like, you know, well-known or confident in business, but if there's other malefic indicators, I don't love sun on the seventh. So there's one strike. Okay. Sun's aspecting the seventh. Now, seventh house ruler is in the 12th house. 12th house is a Dastana house. We don't want to see the seventh ruler in the 12th house. It will give an attraction to partners who are foreign, from different lands, who are spiritual, who are culturally different, but I don't love seventh ruler in the 12th. That's two strikes. There's already issues with the seventh house. Okay. Now, the seventh ruler is Jupiter, and now the seventh ruler is near Rahu and Saturn, two malefics. Saturn does not like to be in Leo because Leo is opposite of Aquarius, right? So Saturn likes to be in Aquarius. It does not like to be in Leo. So now the seventh ruler is bad, right? So now we have three strikes already. Okay, Sun and malefic is on the seventh. Pluto's also aspecting the seventh. We can take that as well too. Seventh ruler, Jupiter, is next to Saturn in a sign that Saturn does not want to be in. It's not like, you know, Saturn is now in a great sign. There's too many other things going on, okay? And it's also near Rahu. We don't want the seventh ruler next to Saturn and Rahu. That's giving a lot of karma. That's giving issues, right? Seventh ruler near Saturn is already bad in Leo, outside of a sign it wants to be in. And then you add in Rahu. It's not good for the seventh ruler. Okay, seventh ruler is in the 12th house, Dastana house. Seventh ruler is near Saturn in Leo, where Saturn doesn't want to be. And then Rahu is there heightening the energy of like the issues and the karma for the seventh ruler. Okay, so there's all of that, right? Now, in the D9 Navamsha, Saturn is in the seventh. Okay. That's too many strikes, right? That's too many strikes for the seventh house being negative or having issues, right? So that's the marriage house. So that's a lot, right? That's a lot of Saturn influence into the seventh house, which would show delays in marriage, karma in marriage, or perhaps some desire to do it much later on in life or not at all, right? So that's the seventh house. That's what's going on. It's not just sun's on the seventh, never get married. No, we see a lot of issues, right? The way you have to view astrology is like, you can see it in a way of like, let's count all the problematic influences for a house and see what it adds up to, right? So sun on the seventh ruler is pretty destroyed in the 12th house next to Saturn outside of its placement near Rahu, heightening the issues. And then Saturn's in the 7th in the D9 Navamsha, which is the marriage house and the marriage chart. That's too much, guys. That is too many issues for the 7th house, okay? So intuitively, she like feels that in her life experience. She feels like maybe I shouldn't get married, or maybe, you know, that's not the path for me in this lifetime. Similarly to how that 5th ruler is in a sign it doesn't want to be in, and it's near Rahu, and it's in the 12th house, a Justana house. Similarly to the 7th ruler being bad, the 5th ruler is not great either, right? So she doesn't really have a desire for children. Right, so I'm saying this not to like scare people away from doing things that maybe their chart indicates them wouldn't be great, but to show you how intuitive we are as people, and we kind of like feel our charts, whether we're conscious or not conscious of that. It's already playing out in our life story, in our life experience, in our psyche, etc. Okay, so she has a chart where I would honestly say, you know what, if you don't want to get married, don't do it. There's no need, because there's a lot of indications of like divorce, issues in marriage, loss of marriage. I will say, if she was going to get married at some point, she should do it with someone who is from a different land, from a different culture, culturally different, and someone who is spiritual, because of the 7th ruler and the 12th near Rahu. Saturn's in the 7th, probably someone much older, someone who's wise, mature, spiritual. Like, that's how the chart could potentially work, but more often than not, all these 7th house issues, she's just not going to really want to do it because the chart is so afflicted for marriage. And 7th house is also business partnerships. And remember, a huge part of her story is that she went away from the music industry and went her own path. That is because the business partnerships were not going well for her, right? It's like that. It's not just one aspect on the 7th house, one malefic on the 7th. It is so many different points of negative influence for that 7th house. Marriage is not going to go well. Business partnerships are not going to go well. Okay. And remember, once again, that sun in the 1st, she is here to actually walk her own path, be about herself, be independent, be autonomous, like that. Okay. Now, another thing that is very interesting about her chart, and this is again a point that's like eerily spot on, is her 10th house is Gemini. 10th ruler is Mercury. Guys. 10th house of career. What's Maya's career going to be? Okay. 10th ruler is in the 2nd house. She uses her voice in the career. She's going to use expression, the vocals, quite literally. She is a singer. Okay. 10th ruler in the 2nd. It is near Venus in Libra. It is now a career that is connected to the arts, poetic, creative expression. That's it. That's her whole career. And we also do get Ketu influence onto the 10th. And I was trying to unravel that when I was looking at her chart earlier. And I was like, Ketu on the 10th, what does that mean? And then it came to me and I was like, oh, I get it. Ketu is aspect near her 10th house. Ketu shows strange karma, disconnection from a traditional career path. Once again, she worked in the music industry and had a lot of karma and weird stuff unravel, so she had to go her own path and become an independent artist. Ketu on the 10th, even though the 10th ruler is strong because it's near a really strong Venus, so the career can be positive, it can be creative, it can be artistic, it can be using the voice. Yes, that's everything she did. We also get that Ketu influence on the 10th, which shows that the career path is also kind of karmic, strange, and she's going to have some issues at points of the career, which she did also have as well too. Okay. All right, so I thought that was so fascinating, and I really like Maya's chart. You know, I feel like there's so much independence, there's so much creativity. Yes, it's not great for marriage and children, but how funny that she already knows that. And she's already walking that path, right? She already knows her path. She knows her karma intuitively. So really, really fascinating. And in her D9 Navamsha, the 10th ruler, let's see, where's the 10th house in here? I don't know if you guys can see this on your end, but okay, the 10th ruler is in the 1st house. So in the D9, the 10th ruler is in the 1st house of self. So her career is around herself. It's around independence, working for herself, being herself, etc. So that's really her whole life story. Okay. Oh, one more thing I did want to point out is she does have Mars debilitated in Cancer in the 11th house. So she might have some 11th house issues at times. You know, she might have some issues with different friendships or groups or organizations at certain points. And then Mars is also aspecting the 5th house, which isn't great for children, right? Mars is not a great influence on the 5th house of children, but it is also going to motivate the 5th house for the creativity and the mind, because Mars is aspecting its own placement it wants to be in, which is Capricorn. So that Mars is like motivating the 5th house of creativity, and the mind can be very Mars-like. So she can be very activated in her mind as well too. Okay. All right, so that was an analysis into Maya's Vedic astrological chart. Again, because she has that really benefic moon in Taurus in the 9th house, her chart is very easy to read. It's like seamless, it's like flawless. The only way I could explain this is when someone has a good 9th house, it's like you're in that synergy with their chart. It never really fails. If someone has really weird stuff in their 9th house, like a lot of afflictions, those are the charts you read where you're like, I can't even really figure out what's going on fully. It takes so long. Maya has a chart where it's like, oh my God, it's like beautiful. It's like seamless. It's like flowing. She's lived out her exact chart. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know what you think about Maya, if you've listened to her music, if you've seen her interviews. She's just so cool, and the first thing I noticed in her interviews was her beautiful, like soft, really soft-spoken, calm sort of voice. That's going to be 2 benefics in the 2nd house. Venus gives a soft, beautiful, poetic voice. Mercury's there, creative speaking, and her voice is obviously just her whole life story, right? That's all of it. That's what she's here to do, is to use her voice, and that is her first ruler, and that's Venus in its own sign in the 2nd, and that's Venus with Mercury, like that. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment, like, and subscribe so I can keep making content that you guys can learn Vedic astrology through, and it is really my main goal and intention to bring true Vedic chart analysis into the Western world so people can see what a beautiful system of astrology Vedic astrology is, and how minute and precise we can get in chart analysis. All right, I'm sending all the love, and we will talk soon. Bye, guys.